President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, held a meeting with the Minister of Petroleum of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Javad Oji, to review the work agenda in the area of hydrocarbons. The Russian government announced that at least 126 people were evacuated from the Azovstal steel plant in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. A residential building collapsed in Lagos, Nigeria's largest city, killing at least 8 people, with many feared trapped, emergency response services said. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. On Monday, the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, held a meeting with the Minister of Petroleum of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Javad Oji, to review the work agenda in the area of hydrocarbons. The Venezuelan Minister of People's Power for Petroleum, Tarek El-Aissami, and various representatives of the Islamic nation also participated in the meeting, where different bilateral cooperation agreements in the oil, gas, and petrochemical sectors were reviewed, as well as the different alliances between both nations. Likewise, El-Aissami had previously discussed with Minister Javad Oji some actions to overcome the economic, financial, and commercial blockade imposed by the United States on Venezuela. On his Twitter account, President Maduro said it was a productive meeting to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood and cooperation in energy matters, and reiterated his gratitude and affection for the Iranian people. The International Meeting of Solidarity with Cuba was held Monday at the Palace of Conventions in Havana. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel attended the event, as well as other high-ranking officials, leaders of political organizations and trade unions. Authorities from more than 60 countries and 219 political organizations discussed about the Union and the anti-imperialist struggle worldwide. The participants reaffirmed the demand to end the 60-year-old economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the U.S. against Cuba, and the recognition to the island for the advances in biotechnology and health during the COVID-19 pandemic.
At this time, as has happened on more than one occasion throughout our history, the United States has once again manipulated the immigration issue in search of pretexts for political purposes against Cuba. The forces that stimulate and determine irregular immigration to that country are once again being conjured up. Every time the United States fails to comply with immigration agreements, it closes legal channels for immigrants and intensifies the economic blockade against Cuba.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, condemned that the United States did not invite Cuba to the 9th edition of the Summit of the Americas, while urging the inclusion of all the countries of the continent.
If there's going to be a Summit of the Americas, all the countries have to participate. All the peoples of America. Nobody should be excluded. Nobody. Everybody. Everybody. All. If there's going to be a Summit of the Americas, all the countries have to participate. All the peoples of America. Nobody should exclude anybody. All. The policy in America has to change. We can no longer maintain the policy of 2 centuries ago in a very respectful way, because how is it that we convene a Summit of the Americas, but we do not invite everyone? Where are those who are not invited from? From which continent?
In Brazil, nearly 5,000 rural women participated in a march to denounce the appropriation of rural territories for the installation of wind farms. The mobilized women took to the streets in the city of Solanea and the state of Paraíba, denouncing that the wind farms are appropriating the land, affecting local production. The participants are part of the Borborema Pole, an entity that for 30 years developed a project for the construction of agroecological family agriculture, which gave important results in the reduction of hunger and poverty in rural families. The march strengthens and deepens on the debate on the wind energy model, with the implementation of wind farms that are sold as clean energy producers, but that appropriate the rural territory. In Colombia, the presidential candidate Gustavo Petro denounced a plan to attack him. The announcement made through a press release, Petro warned that his security team alerted him to possible actions against his life by a criminal group called the Mountain Range, dedicated to drug trafficking and contract killings. The information provided by the security team was then confirmed by the analysis and investigation team that directs Petro's presidential campaign, which had access to sources from police institutions. Faced with this situation, Petro announced that his visit to the coffee axis of the country, scheduled for May 3rd and 4th, was suspended. On Monday, a federal jury convicted the New York Police Department veteran Thomas Webster of assaulting an officer during the U.S. Capitol riot. Webster, a 20-year NYPD veteran, was the first Capitol riot defendant to be tried on an assault charge and the first to present a jury with a self-defense argument. Webster testified that he was trying to protect himself from a Metropolitan Police Department officer, Noah Rathbun, rogue cop who punched him in the face, but the jury rejected it. Rathbun testified that he didn't punch or pick a fight with Webster as a violent mob attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, disrupting Congress from certifying Joe Biden's 2020 presidential election victory over then-President Donald Trump. There was no dissension among us at all. We unanimously agreed that there was no self-defense argument here at all, said a juror who spoke on condition of anonymity. Webster faced counts of assaulting, civil disorder, disorderly and disruptive conduct in restricted grounds with a dangerous weapon, engaging in physical violence in restricted grounds, among others. Amazon warehouse workers rejected a union bid, dealing a blow to organizers who last month pulled off the first successful U.S. organizing effort in the retail giant's history. The workers cast about 62% against the union, giving Amazon enough support to fend off a second labor win. Turnout was 61%, with about 1,600 workers eligible to vote, according to a voter list provided by Amazon. A union attorney says the group is planning to file objections to the election. It should be remembered that the multinational company focused on e-commerce was involved in controversy due to repeated accusations by workers of labor mistreatment since several years ago. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. The Russian government announced that at least 126 people were evacuated from the Azovstal steel plant in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. According to the statement of the Russian Ministry of Defense, since Saturday, April 30, 21 people left the steel plant, while 25 others left near houses and were received by Russian authorities. The Department of Civilian drinking water and food. Mostly of Ukrainian owners expressed their decision to be evacuated to the territories controlled by the People's Republic. As a result of the Russian operation, also on Sunday, another 80 civilians were evacuated to return to Ukraine and were handed over to the Red Cross and representatives of the United Nations. According to the Russian security forces, all people evacuated from Azovstal passed verification of documents and personnel data, as the filtration is a leak is a mandatory procedure for all those leaving the steel plant, with the aim of searching for Ukrainian nationalists among the civilians to bring them to the Prisoners Exchange Fund and to prosecute them before the authorities of the Donetsk People's Republic for the war crimes committed on civilian population. Russia's Defense Ministry spokesman Major General Igor Konashenkov said on Monday that its forces have struck dozens of Ukrainian military targets in the east.
3 unmanned aerial vehicles, Bayraktar TV-2, were destroyed by Russian air defense systems in the area of Snake Island. Also, 4 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles were shot down in the areas of the settlements of Chervony, Oskil, and Nevskoye of the Kharkiv region, as well as Vesele of the Donetsk People's Republic. In addition, 5 submerged rockets were intercepted in the areas of Isium, Topolske, and Mala Komishuvaka.
and Russia citizens marched to the Ukrainian embassy in Moscow in commemoration of the 8th anniversary of the named Odessa tragedy. About 2,000 people rallied in the capital in memory of those who died during the events of May 2, 2014 in the Ukrainian city of Odessa. The events took place when Ukrainian fascists caused the death of 48 people and left hundreds injured after setting fire to the House of Trade Unions, the place where demonstrators against the change of the then government and the Euromaidan events took shelter after being besieged by the ultranationalists. Official figures speak of at least 172 detainees for this case, who are being tried since November 2014. The participants demanded speed in the investigations and justice for the victims. Kadri Simpson, European Commissioner for Energy, said that any upcoming payments to Russia in rubles would be violation of its sanctions and not accepted by member states. Simpson added that even though several companies were expected to pay Gazprom bills in May, it will be legitimate to reject paying them in rubles. The official warned that Gazprom's action to suspend supplies to Poland and Bulgaria showed they were unreliable suppliers and all EU member states should have plans for full disruption to their supplies. She mentioned the construction of the gas interconnectors between Lithuania and Poland and a pipeline between Greece and Bulgaria as long-term solutions.
We made clear that European energy companies are due to make their next payment to Gazprom in mid-May and are trying to understand better what they should do. And we need to give them the clarity that paying in rubles through the conversion mechanism managed by the Russian public authorities and a second dedicated account in Gazprom Bank is a violation of the sanctions and cannot be accepted.
Nearly 4,000 gas stations in Spain teeter on the brink of closure due to the impact brought by the ongoing pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez announced late March a 20-cent discount per liter of fuel for all drivers in Spain. The price subsidy will be split between the government and petrol stations. The policy has largely been welcomed by the public, but dealt a huge blow to medium and small-sized gas stations, which fear that the impact they suffered from 2021, the delay of promised government reimbursements, and the advance payment they are forced to make would mean further slashed incomes and worse days ahead. Several countries are still seeing rising deaths amid surging COVID-19 cases. In the United States, cases topped to 81.35 million and almost 1 million deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University. Meanwhile, Italy reported more than 40,000 new cases with 105 new deaths, bringing the total number to more than 16.5 million and 163,000 respectively. The government extended the obligation to wear face masks in public transportation and in some indoor venues until June 15th. The country's Minister of Health reported on Monday South Korea recorded 20,084 new cases, bringing the total number of infections to more than 17 million, health authorities reported. The latest number of infected people who were in a serious condition stood at 461, down by 32 from the previous day. Among the approximately 4,000 victims of COVID in Zambia registered by the WHO lies 300 health workers. The number was released by the Health Minister Silvia Masebo, who further encouraged all medical staff to get vaccinated. Just above 10% of the southern African country's population is fully vaccinated, according to Reuters. Zambia began administering doses to its population in April 2021. Masebo said her cabinet was going to relaunch the vaccination campaign next week and was planning to bring vaccines to all communities. The minister added in the last 24 hours, 22 new COVID cases out of 1,004 tests were detected. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. A residential building collapsed in Lagos, Nigeria's largest city, killing at least 8 people, with many feared trapped. Emergency response services reported. The residential apartment building collapsed in the Oyingbo area of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial center and most populated city, with more than 14 million people. The cause of the collapse is yet to be established. Residents and passers-by joined a team of emergency and relief workers searching through the rubble for survivors. It is not clear how many occupants were in the apartment building when the collapse occurred. Prices for basic commodities were soaring in Uganda for several weeks. The government blames the prolonged coronavirus pandemic and Ukrainian conflict for the current situation in the country. The once busy streets of Kampala's markets are getting emptier each day, and as more Ugandans are facing with increasing prices for basic commodities. In recent weeks, many filling stations run out of gasoline as the population fuel prices shooting up. While addressing the Ugandan parliament, the state minister for finance in charge of trade, David Bahati, said the government is trying to manage the situation. He said the challenges the country experiences come from a global crisis that is affecting many countries around the world. Iranian President Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi called on the Islamic world to do its best to stop the Israeli regime's attack on Palestine. The Iranian Prime Minister said on Monday during a telephone call with Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan that it was necessary to employ all international efforts and capabilities to stop the Zionist inhuman attacks. The Persian leader emphasized that the policy of the Islamic Republic in Turkey should be focused on supporting the Palestinian people and on rescuing them from Tel Aviv's colonial repression. The Israeli occupation forces have increased their attacks against the Palestinians since the beginning of Ramadan, leaving a large number of people dead, injured, and detained in the occupied Palestinian territories. Around 200,000 Palestinians prayed during Eid al-Fitr, a holiday to celebrate the end of the Muslim Ramadan. The Palestinians went Monday to the old city of occupied Jerusalem, where they heard the sermon of the Imam of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, who called for resistance and the need for a continuous presence in the so-called blessed mosque to counter the schemes that the Israeli occupation seeks to impose. The religious authority reminded the faithful that the mosque was witness to repressive operations by the occupation forces in recent days. They cannot allow such desecration nor harm to its sanctity. Six Muslims in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, gathered on Monday at the Rahma Mosque to celebrate the end of Ramadan. The mosque's imam said it is also less fortunate. This year, Muslims around the world observe the activity marked with communal prayers, gatherings around festive meals, and new clothes. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres began a tour to several West African countries. During his visit to Senegal, the first stop, Guterres visited the construction site of the future UN headquarters for West Africa and the new town of Diamniadio and the vaccine manufacturing plant being built by the Institut Pasteur. He took part in a traditional Ramadan sunset meal with President Macky Sall and current person of the African UN Deputy Spokesman Farhan Haq said at a press briefing. The next visits will be to Niger and Nigeria. His tour will end on May 4th.
Regarding West Africa and Sahel, we spoke about your efforts against terrorism and violent extremism and about the situation in Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali. On that point, we agreed on the importance to pursue dialogue with the de facto authorities of these three countries to ensure the return to constitutional order as soon as possible.
We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Neo Martin. Thanks for watching.